Hello and welcome to 365 Days Towards Racial Change. My name is Tomlins Nyback. Welcome to this forum where we discuss Black issues in the United States of America and white issues, how that configures and how each part plays against one another. We're here seeking some answers to two main themes that have evolved out of this project. One theme has two parts. The first part is, does the slave mind continue from generation to generation? Is it transferred by whatever means we can talk about? Intuitively, conditioning. It's probably, I would say it might be a combination of both. We're just putting the question out there right now. And conversely, does the white mind of entitlement, privilege, expectation of success navigating America and the world system get passed down from generation to generation? Those are some of the things we're going to talk about, or we'll get a sense of as we go through this year-long project. Second part is, are Blacks playing the economic game properly? Do we have a financial literacy? Do we know the language of money? Do we know how to articulate it? Can we educate our children and one another about financial institutions? What happens to our dollar when it's deposited in our bank? All those little digital, it's all electronic. Used to be done on ledgers, is done electronically, and it's an extremely sophisticated phenomenon that happens with money versus currency. All these things, Blacks need an education around this consistently. We needed more, I feel, in private school, which we don't get. That's by design. We're kept dark in the dark. We're kept ignorant, and even more than so than Black people, but Black people especially are kept ignorant. And the lack of understanding and education is a hindrance, encumbrance for us as a group. So those are some of the things we'll find are my main issues as we go through this year. I am inspired by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson, and he's a man of many talents. He's helped with getting presidents elected. He's been very influential in school systems, mostly in Florida, but I believe his resume includes some influence in Detroit, I believe, Detroit or Chicago. We'll go over his resumes from time to time. Anyway, when he speaks, I listen because he knows what he's talking about. He's got the resume nationally, internationally to prove it. After I started hearing his videos, I quickly bought three of his works. First work was a Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. We reference these books, by the way, heavily. They're kind of our guide through this maze of how Blackness is expressed or not in America. Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice. And finally, Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America, PowerNomics. Find Dr. Anderson at PowerNomics.com. Also, the Heritage Institute. Behind me, you'll see the hashtag #US2, hashtag USTOO. Black women there gathering in that forum there with their issues. But like most internet things, it's open. Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, is kind of a Black Facebook. You can connect there as well. And there's plenty of social media sites and ways to connect and hear the Black conversations as they unfold. It's interesting that I would promote those kind of things. I'm not a social media guy. I don't care about that stuff. I just check in once in a while. That's what I think it should be, not some place that you camp out. But money's made, forget about it. As if money's being made there, somebody's going to show up consistently. Except me, it's not the way I would make money. Okay, here we go. Okay, on that note, if I've got my introductions right, no, not that. Oh, well, let me do, every once in a while we talk about a fictional account of slave life in America, how it impacts and intersects, connects, uh, influence black and white life and all the races, colors in between. Give you in on a little heads up. We're going to get into Uncle Tom's Cabin right after this political series. And today's the last day of the political series. Okay, so stick around if you want to have some story time. It was a big chapter we're coming out of. I found it took 2 days. It's going to be a 2-day adventure. But having said that, we are finishing off our political series. We went through 12 days of Dr. Anderson's political action steps out of his book, PowerNomics, a national plan to empower Black America. Excuse me. And with that, I came across the section he in his voters' rights tools. I forget which action step it was, but I was a little intrigued. I'm not much of a voter, and I've been disillusioned by the polls myself. Besides what Dr. Anderson says about voting and the power of the black vote and whatnot, and how we can, I don't know, become more potent at the polls. Anyway, I looked over voters' rights tools. Excuse me. And while I am no expert on these things, like I said, I don't vote much. These tools present us with ways to be a little more creative in our voting and various ways to get our message out on what we want our needs to be and how we want to be recognized, who we want presented in office, the issues, concerns we have, bringing them out. And because there's such a, I don't know, lethargic attitude among blacks in general about voting, which is no surprise because voting, getting back, I mean, he wrote that whole chapter 7 in that book. He wrote it because blacks settle for such symbolism at the voting booth when everybody else, especially whites, get from the politicians what they sent the politicians there to do. Now, barring the present sitting president and administration, I look and see how that is true. Even though we've had a black president, I can't think of any time anywhere that the black president was explicit about black issues. Okay, it was all white stuff. They passed, an undercover tax called health care and affordable health care and stuff like that, where they compelled people to pay all this exorbitant money that we already didn't have. It's just a total snafu and farce, but that's an example of white power and white privilege moving in its own interest, even with a black president. Very powerful. So what black folks don't get um, their due or their say, but so these tools that I'm going to mention are like uh, I've never heard a black politician, any representative, talking about them. I hear white politicians and white folks speaking about these little devices that they can use at the polls. It's just here as a video record, uh, just to let us know, whoever's watching, we have options. It's not just come uh, to the voting booth and choose from what's presented there. We've got a better, much better set of choices and options by law for registered voters. So here we go. I'm not going to belabor them too much because I'm not as articulate. I've never used any of them. The most voter power, I've voted very seldom do I vote, but maybe signing a petition is the most. I've probably signed more petitions than I've voted. Let me put it that way. So that's about the extent of my exercise of political power. I will say, a little disclaimer that this education, very specifics, in school we're taught the law and history and all that, but if you've stuck around here for any amount of time, I'm very jaded about public education. It's not geared toward empowering people to be masters of their lives. It's to teach us how to be good servants on somebody else's corporate plantation. That's unacceptable. Um, and fellow Americans, I vow if I ever get in position, I'm going to make some noise about education. Um, we need political understanding. Children need to be going through this process. Now, private education may have some of these components. We need financial literacy, not just opening a bank and saving money and buying all these insurance products and stuff that the market puts on the television at us. But we need to understand the money structure, um, how banking works, and things like that. So I just say all that to say that my um, my stunted growth in politics, voting, how that political machine works is by design, and you don't even have to be a conspiracy theorist to believe any of that. So my ignorance is due in part to how restricted education is. We got all this going on, and they don't even stress or encourage, right? That we have, I guess, some school politics and there's representation and stuff like that. But it's high school. Okay, our high school kids aren't listening anyway. But the stress it, the drive it home, create some curriculum around that, so we can come out into the world with a better informed choice of whether or not to be at the poll and how aggressive to be in politics. Remember, politics is quid pro quo, something for something. So, when we send politicians out, then we're expecting them to fulfill some promise, uh, enrich our group. They win. That's how. That's really the nutshell of politics. Not so much different ideologies and things like that. Those lines are blurred and they intersect and they commingle and stuff. It's not as Republican and Democrat aren't as clearly definable, maybe, as they were a long time ago. So I only picked out the tools that he mentioned. I'm sure that there's probably books and manuals about the chess game of creative voting devices an individual or group can use at the polls. But he's got 1, 2, 3. He's got 7 or 8 here. All right. First is a referendum. Now, a referendum, that's petitions to find out what the voter's mind is. It's a way to expedite public issues. You know, it is a way to kind of shorten the bureaucracy on some issues. If some issues are pressing and need to be addressed more in a timely manner, you hear maybe on the evening news about something going up for referendum. And that's what they're saying. They're saying they're going to have some extra procedures to move an issue along. It's come to the attention of the legislature that this issue needs to be expedited, and a decision needs to be made on it much more quickly than debates and going around in the bureaucratic circles, so to speak. And that's your referendum. Recall. Now, Dr. Anderson, he's big on this, and this is something that black folks should exercise more and more. This recall is the power to remove and replace a public official who's not performing, dragging their heels, abandoning a platform, things like that. I would say upon exercising such rights as a recall, that'd be a swift process determined by popular vote would be nice, but black folks, if black folks send, this whole context of these 12 steps in Chapter 7 of PowerNomics, a national plan to empower Black America, the whole concept is blacks empowered being a focused group of voters, and we should have the power to kick his or her ass out of there when they're not performing on our behalf. Initiatives similar to referendums, bypassing normal legislative processes, public hearings, get the government to hear more of our mind, just don't let them. And we see this a lot, especially with education, ironically. That'd probably be where I would start, making a ruckus at some of these educational public hearings to begin getting my voice heard about these 2 major deficiencies in education. And, if they give me my little 5 minutes, get up there and do it, but part of it, they got me mired in life. So I'm sure many people like me just fall through the cracks on this thing. Selective withdrawal of patronage, just retract support. He mentions that anyway, by encouraging blacks to withdraw from the Republican and Democratic Party to form our own Black Democratic Party, uh, which would be great. Lawsuits, self-explanatory, to address illegal behavior, uh, get them out of there. This is leaning towards impeachment proceedings. The it would be a very good device to use. If we could bring some credible lawsuits and have them stick. If we found some stuff. This whole since 2016 has been nothing but lawsuits, investigations, guys associated, too many men associated with the president are going to jail. So our present president, he needs to watch out. He's on somebody's radar big time. And the write-in, I hear this a lot actually during voting times. Is the write-in, people want to write in. They say, well, I don't like the choices, so they can write in a name. Now, I've been, like the times I've been to the poll, I've not seen the write-in book or a sign option, And that's what I mean. Like, who do you ask? Do we have to ask? Should we just demand we want to write in a name? So those are the things I need to navigate if I get more motivated to be out there and participate. So those are a few of the tools. Like I said, I'm sure there's more. An experienced, seasoned voter probably has all kinds of options and things at their disposal that they exercised and participated in. Good for them. I would say Black folks in general need to, as a group, we just are just following and plodding along into whatever's offered, and we need to come out of that. It goes back to my statement about playing the economic game properly. In America, with money, there's a language and stuff that we haven't been taught. Same way in politics. Everything. We sit in these classrooms for 12 to 13 years if we graduate high school. And it's just such a conditioning process, to believe whoever's in the front of the room. It's very, very sad the way this country, we're powerful, we have influence, we survive and thrive in the world because everything is so carefully orchestrated. But what about the people whose mind becomes awake and alive like mine and says, you guys ripped me off for 13 years, just chewed up my life and painted this picture that there's so much equality and emancipation and stuff like that. And it's just not so in the world. Very, very sad, America. So there's some voting rights tools, and that's just that little piece. I wanted to stick that in there. The election is next year, so, we're going to be revisiting politics consistently, to get an idea of what's going on and how this thing works. Thanks for spending time with me again. I'm Tomlin's Nyback. That's 365 days towards racial change. We'll see you again.